Hello, welcome to a new Hearts of Iron 4 video. Today we're going to take a look at CombatWidth. By the end of this video, you will understand what CombatWidth is. You know why? Because I don't care how complicated you think it sounds or how many other videos that you've seen. I make it easy for you. And so yeah, it is not a case of trying to remember what it is. It's just a case of understanding the simple bits. Once you understand them, it makes sense. Once it makes sense, it's easy. Once it's easy, you don't bother got to try and remember it because, well, it's obvious, right? If it's easy, it's obvious. And so let's make a start. So all that I've done, I've loaded up Germany 1939. I've done it regular difficulty. I'm not going to waste any of your time with these icons, nor mine. I'm just going to get right on with it. You may say, what's this horrible purple mess? Well, the answer is Italy's sending 5 divisions over, and not that that's going to make any difference to me, but it has made a mess of the map. Right, we've got 3 generals partaking. Witzelbaum's just guarding France because I don't want them to attack me and then suddenly I'm dead before the tutorial's over, so there is that. These 3 generals then I'm going to assign to a field marshal, and then just so we know who we're on about. And again, this guy for the attack. Right, Manstein's at the top. I'm going to put him on a real gentle attack and just ask him to come down here. Why am I doing this? Because I really want to focus on the CombatWidth, and I'm going to be using this front here from Germany pushing into Poland to do so. So we've got Rommel, and he's on the sort of northern side, so we'll draw a front line there, perhaps a little further. There we go, and we'll tell Rommel to attack over here. And then down in the southern part of Germany, we've got Bock, and we'll get him doing a similar thing. Right. So that's the plan, right? Again, Air Force. I guess I just get it involved so that we don't get annihilated. So these, just this messy. I'm just gonna go air superiority, close air support, and we'll give these lot to Bock because they're closer. There's a bunch more aircraft here. Again, fighter, close air support. Give those to Rommel, and then these up here. Fighters, close air support, and give them to Manstein. That's it. The rest of them, air superiority, again, just so we don't get completely annihilated in the back while we're not looking. That's going to be it. I'm not going to waste any more time setting stuff up, and I'm just going to unpause 1 hour per thing on the slowest speed. Available war goal, declare war. I'm not going to call the allies, but I am going to press go. And so let's okay. So we are now at war with Poland, and with the orders drawn, Poland's joining the allies. Okay, let's get rid of these. And okay. Just so the action starts, Witzelbaum, obviously there's holding the line. Alright, so we're seeing now these green arrows. If you've seen my tutorials before, or even seen this game, you'll have seen this. And again, I do wish we could get rid of the Italian overlays. I'm sure there is probably an option somewhere. It's a new addition in the early access to hide insignificant others from just messing up your view. Right, so let's get on with the top. Someone's saying, look, it was here about CombatWidth, not what some early access betas mess. I quite agree with you. So for example here, this is going to be a great place to start. So each one of these, currently they're all green, but each one of these, there's a battle taking place for a tile. Where there isn't a number, whether it's red, yellow or green, there is no battle taking place. So for example, this tile here, currently, or this county or region or whatever you want to call it, we're going to refer to each one of these as a tile. Okay? Now you can see some they're all different shapes, they're not all squares. And this particular one does not have any action. Now, if we ask these guys to go aggressive, then there would be. But let's focus on where there is. So this tile here. And so I've currently paused it so we can spend some time investigating this. So I'm going to click on the tile. And what you're going to see here, and you've probably seen this screen before, but we're really going to take a closer look at it now. Currently, we've got one division attacking, and that's this one here, the Light Panzer Division here, Leichter Division, and I can see it's the Panzer icon. I also have one division in reserve, and so it's another Light Panzer Division back here. This does not mean there are two divisions attacking. It means there's one division attacking and there's one division in reserve that would like to help attack. Somebody's saying, what about the combat width? Well, here we see it. It's a light tank division. There we see the combat width. It's only 10 wide. We'll take a look at why that is in a sec, but what suffice to say, there's another light tank division down here, and so if they're the same divisions, which it sounds like it, the total width, assuming this division does get called up, is going to be 10 and another 10. In other words, 20. Well, how many combat width fit on this tile? And you know there's a whole way of figuring out what you can do. I think it's F5. Yeah, there we go. F5, and hover the mouse over any tile that you like, whether you're attacking it or not. Let's just go example for Leipzig here. And if we take a look at that, you can see in the middle of that text overlay, it says combat width 80, and then it says additional attacks 40 in brackets. Now, if we come over here to the trees, we see it's combat width 60, additional attack 30. What about the mountains? Combat width 50, additional attack 25. And so you can see different types of terrain have different combat widths. And so what that means in a nutshell, again, there's a little more to this. I'll show that in a minute, but just very, very basic. You can't put more guys in that one tile than what the combat width allows. Now, you may say, where I see there that you said that the combat width for the tanks was 10. Where'd you get that information from? I'm going to show you here. So here where you get your division designs, this is this Leichter tank division that we was on about. Edit, and there you see it. Combat width 10. And why? Well, here, the light tank, combat width of 2. The motorized combat width of 2. We've got 4 of them. Well, 4 times 2 is 8, plus the 1 for the Panzer. That makes 10. All your support stuff is quote-unquote free. And so, yeah, basically these guys are 10. Now, if we were to modify this division, we're not gonna, but just for argument's sake, say, well, let's put another light tank on it. Look how it's going to impact the combat width. It goes from 10 to 12. And again, if we add another tank, 12 to 14. And so the more stuff you add on makes sense, whether it's infantry, whether it's trucks, whether it's panzers, whether it's light, medium, heavy, whatever it is, whether it's artillery, the wider stuff gets. Now, it's not always by 2. For example, if we add motorized anti-air, watch what happens. It goes up by 1, 15. If we add artillery motorized, watch what happens. Instead of 2, it adds 3. And so different types of units vary, but generally speaking, it's 2 combat width per, you know, new battalion of whatever it is that you add on. If we were to add cavalry, look, same again, 14 to 16. Okay, I'm not going to save that, but now we can see where we get that number from. Now, rather than pressing F5 all the time and trying to figure out, you know, how much is it on the combat width and trying to remember it all, because if you've got a brain like mine, it's like a sieve. You don't remember anything. The easy way to tell, and again, click back on this combat icon, is this number here. Now, note it says 105 combat width. Well, hang on a minute. If we press F5 and take a look at the tile, it actually says combat width 70, but don't forget the end bit, additional attacks 35. 70 plus 35, you guessed it, 105. What does that mean? It means because this tile that we're attacking is adjoined by more than one tile. In other words, we've got this tile touching it, we've got a little bit of this one, and maybe even a little bit of this one. We can actually put more guys attacking that one tile because they're basically coming at it from different directions. Like a bit of a pincer movement. It's basically the game's way of giving you a bonus for doing you know, an attack from multiple directions. Think of it like that. And so we cannot exceed 105 combat width. Well, we can, but this is where we now get talking about penalties, and so you can exceed it by, and it's a magic number, up to, but no more than 33%. And so what that means is, let's say we had loads of divisions here, and their combat width added up to 120, and the battle had been raging for some time because the enemy, rather than just having one division with a combat width of 6, was actually really strong and dug in. The battle had been raging for long enough so that all the reserves had begun to reinforce. We could eventually have 110, 120. You know, I'm trying to do some math on the fly here. 105 plus 33. So we could have up to about a combat width of 137 or 138, something like that. Now, if you think, hang on, this is all too confusing. Why, if the limit is 105, will it let you have more? Well, here's the answer, right? You are never going to be able to design divisions in such a way that you perfectly fill the combat width in every situation, because the tiles vary and the combat situation varies. You know, are you attacking from one tile or more than one direction? Is it city? Is it open plains? Is it desert? Is it mountain? Is it forest? Whatever. Is it marshland? And so you could design the perfect division for every single one of those tiles, although it's going to take you forever to do and the micromanagement would be horrific. Or you can compromise and try and build certain types of divisions that work better, generally speaking, and that's where this comes in place. And so let's say I make a division that's a combat width of 30. Now 30, 60, 90. Clearly that would fit in a 105. Would 120, if I have one more division, fit in the 105? No, because it's more than 105. But with the 33% penalty we're talking about, yes, you could. So you could get 4 divisions into combat that are each 30 combat width wide, which means they would total 120. They could get into combat. However, the division that pushes over 105, so the division that takes us from the 90 up to the 120, will then have a penalty attached to it. So rather than it attacking at full pelt, it will be reduced, which makes sense, right? If you've got, let's say, just imagine it in a completely different way. Imagine you've got a tank and it can comfortably carry 5 guys inside that tank, right? But the situation dictates, I don't know, you're on the run, somebody's gotten injured, whatever it is, you suddenly need to put 2 more guys in that tank. They're not going to help, or even if they wanted to, they can't. Why? Because there's not enough room for you all now. You're all going to be squashed into the tank. Will you be able to shut the door if you really squeeze everybody in? Yes, but now you ain't got the elbow room to aim your gun properly or whatever, but you're not entirely useless either. You're just not as efficient as you otherwise would be. Think of that 33% allowance over the top of the combat width limit as that that penalty. You know, you're trying to fit too many guys into a space. They don't really got enough room to breathe, but yes, they can fit in, and they can still make a difference, albeit a much smaller one. So I hope that now is beginning to make a little sense. Now what I'm going to do is unpause, and I'm just going to manually move some of these divisions around so you can see these numbers change a bit. So again, without picking up speed, I'm going to manually select these guys and get them attacking this tile. Same with this guy. Let's do that again. Right, pause. Now, looks like Poland's gotten an extra division there as well, but let's select it here. And so now look at what's happened. The 2 light tanks are fighting. So that's a combat width of 20. We're allowed up to 140 now. How come that's increased from 105? Because we've gotten this guy from yet another tile stuck in. So before we only had the 2 tiles. Now we've got another division from the 3rd tile. And again, if we had a 4th tile surrounding this spot, that number would increase yet again. Why are the 5 reserves not immediately got stuck in? Because, I mean, clearly there's room, right? We can have up to 140 combat width there. We've only got 20 there. We've got all these guys in reserve, which basically means these guys are waiting to get stuck into the action. Well, in order to cover this, we need to temporarily come out into the Internet Explorer, and hopefully this will make sense. Alright, here we are on the Paradox Wiki, and I've made some notes here. And so, let's go through this carefully. I'll just reduce the sound a little bit. And again, I'm going to explain anything that sounds a little bit, because it took me time to get through this. Now I've been playing this for years. The combat width of a division is the total width of its battalions. Okay, most battalions, and again, this, remember when we were adding the tanks 1 by 1 and it was going up by 2? Those are classed as battalions, whether it's infantry, whatever it is. Most battalions have a... Let me just turn this off. Most battalions have a combat width of 2. Artillery, including motorized, have combat width of 3. Anti-air has a combat width of 1, same with anti-tank. I showed that, we discussed that, okay. And again, support companies have none. Right, at the start of a battle, or when reinforcing, divisions will be added from the reserve, so this is what we're waiting for, to the front line, unless the combat width has already been filled, or the penalty would exceed 33%. Remember, it's allowed to fill and exceed up to 33%. It then goes on to explain how that's calculated. So the point is, all of those divisions that we have in this particular graphic, there's 2 divisions fighting, there's 1 in reserve, we've got 2 fighting and 5 in reserve. They are waiting to join the front line. Why don't they join the front line immediately? That was the question. We'll come back to that in a sec. Here's why. Divisions that initially did not fit into the combat width or that join the combat after it has already started end up in reserves. That's where they are. While in reserve, these units do not take or deal damage. So in other words, they're just sat there waiting. They're not in the fight at all. They do not regain organization. This is crucial. You know, and I like to interchange the word organization with sleep. So if they're low organization or they're tired, they're not going to sit there resting. They're basically on tenterhooks, raring to go, even if they're not doing anything. They also do not increase their entrenchment bonus or preparation bonuses. In other words, they're basically stood at attention, raring to go, even though they might not be for hours and hours and hours. They do provide recon, so if you've got reconnaissance there, they'll do that. And anti-air, which makes sense, right? So if the planes are bombing them and they've got anti-air guns, they will at least help out in that regard. 1 unit in reserve has a chance to join combat every hour as long as there is combat width available. So think of what that just said. If we come back into the game, these guys, if we unpause, every hour, have a small chance of joining the combat. And we can see there, based on all the bonuses we have, chance of reinforcing the front line is 9% for this particular squad. For this one, the motorized, it's 11%. And you can see there the modifiers that cause that. And again, because we've got a radio unlocked, we get an additional 5% per hour. Elastic defense, an additional 2, and some speed bonus, an additional 2. And so, again, these applies for all of this. And so imagine that in the background of the game, there's like this dice being rolled. And every hour the dice gets rolled, and there's, well, 9% chance these guys are going to get added in. Did it land on what it needs to for them to join? Yes or no? And again, just like the lottery, you could be really lucky and all of them join on the first hour. You could be really unlucky and 10, 20 hours later, nobody's stuck in. But generally speaking, run of the mill, every 2 or 3 hours, you're going to get a new division stuck in. Now, once they're stuck in, they're going to move here. Clearly, that means more combat width. Clearly, that means in this case, the enemy, the Polish guy, is going to have more to deal with. Now, currently, he's got nothing in reserve, and we know that because we've got intel and all the rest of it. And both of his 2 divisions that are fighting are stuck in. 1 infantry, 1 cavalry unit, totaling combat width of 18, and they're up against the panzers who by themselves are going to wipe them out. But once the reserves get stuck in, it's going to be even quicker. So let's unpause and see how long it takes. Watch the hour here. 21, 22. So that was 3 hours since we unpaused. Nobody's yet joined the battle. Let's unpause again. Now 5 hours, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so you can see here that, again, we've been kind of unlucky that none of these have joined combat sooner. When you think each one of them makes it by itself 9%, okay, that makes sense, it's taken that long. But when there's several of them with like 9%, you'd have thought one of them would have come a little sooner. So let's unpause again. Now let's pause. There we see the first division that was ready just jumped over. And again, it was sheer luck. If you remember, the infantry guys 9%, the trucks 11%. So, if we did this a million times, you'd generally expect the trucks to get there first. But in this case, it's this infantry guy. And so now instead of a combat width of 20, because each of these tanks was 10, we've now got this infantry battalion here that's bumped us up to 38. Again, we're going up against a combat width of 18, which means clearly, if you want to view, however you want to cut it, if you ignore all the equipment and the tanks and the horses and the artillery, we're basically 2 guys for every one of theirs. So we'll unpause. And you can see here the battle's definitely going our way. And if we hover the mouse over there, less than a day, which makes sense. I'm just going to increase speed ever so slightly until I see another division. There we go. Now we've got the motorized in there. So look at this. Motorized are in there now. So that's now 44 combat width. We've got 4 divisions that are now actively fighting versus the 2 enemy. We've still got another 3 waiting to join. And we've got more than enough combat width for them to join, which means if we wanted, we could select these guys and say, do you know what, come over here, and should this battle still be fighting for this tower by the time these guys get here, I think there's more than enough room for them to get stuck in. And so I'll tell you what, that tile there is probably a little closer for them. Let's do it. Four divisions, now 5. So I've paused again. Now 5 divisions, still versus the same 2. And so you can imagine that this battle is going to get, it's going to be ticking down increasingly quickly. Now 6 divisions are fighting. You can see there, that's a percentage counter ticking up. And we've got it. There we go. Breakthrough. Fantastic. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But you know what? Just so everybody absolutely is on the same page, let's have another look at this tile. So let's click on it. So Rommel's the main guy in charge. He's got 2 divisions attacking. They're both infantry with 2 panzer divisions in reserve. We've currently got a combat width of 36. We're allowed up to 120. Probably because it's coming from multiple directions, and we're only attacking 1 division. So again, the Polski ain't got a chance. Sure, he's got air. Apparently at the moment we don't, but we're not going to worry about it. And so what I'm going to do before I unpause is get these guys to come to this tile and attack like that. Making sure here nobody is idle. Yeah, these 4 divisions, look, they're right there, but they're going over here. And so I'm just going to right-click on this tile here and then unpause. I'm going to hit escape and just select this here so we can keep an eye on it. Again, the battle's almost over, but look how many guys. We've got 6 divisions waiting to get stuck in, as well as the 2 attacking. Now we've got 3 divisions attacking. Unfortunately, the Panzers did not get stuck in. Now we've got 4 divisions attacking. Now 5. Now 6. Look, now if I pause now, look at this. We've got a combat width of 108 out of a potential 150 versus 18. So even if you ignore the fact that we've got, well, it's all infantry on infantry, so the tanks didn't even get stuck in. But even if they were, they're so heavily outnumbered, and that's reflected by this icon. Look at this, 96% complete. So I'll unpause again. And so I didn't really want to make this about designing divisions, but you know, I just feel like if I do add a little bit of context on the designing of divisions, this will make even more sense, right? So let's come over here and let me go to Division Designer. And again, I've got no DLC enabled here. I'm going to just assume that I'm going to create a new division. So let's come over. Where are we here? Create an empty division. And now I don't got the points to do it, but we can at least play and see. And so you say, well, why would you make wide combat width? Clearly, narrow combat width would seem better because you can get more guys easier and quicker into to fill the tiles. Well, yes, that's true. And so if we just have 1 infantry battalion that makes up this entire division, whether we use support companies or not, that would only be a combat width of 2, which is great, right? So you could have 50 divisions, each with 1 infantry guy in, and those 50 divisions would fit into a tile that allows up to a combat width of 100. They would, and it would fit perfectly. So why don't we do it? Well, here's why. Look how poor the stats are for having just 1 infantry guy. These are terrible. Now, so I'm going to increase just 1 more infantry guy. Look at all the bonuses we get here. Hit points double. Clearly, we've got twice as many. And so it makes sense to have more. So you may say, well, hang on a minute. If you've got twice as many divisions that are half as strong, or half as many divisions that are twice as strong, surely that's the same thing. The answer is, you'd think so, but it's not. And here's why. Because if we add more and more infantry that we can't afford, but again, we're just playing here for the sake of it. Planning. Look at what's happening to the hit points. Look at what's happening to the defense. It's getting higher and higher and higher. So what that means is if we were to set this division with all of these battalions into battle, they've got such high defense, 462, and so many hit points, 375, that when they come into action, it's going to take so much longer for this division to start taking damage before it even starts losing guys to combat. It's not that it can't happen or it won't. It's that it's going to take longer to happen. And then when it does start happening, they're going to lose far less guys. Versus, again, just make a note of these numbers. 375 hit points and a defense of 462. And so I'm just going to create, reset that and just put the 1 infantry down. 25 hit points, 30 defense. And so even though you say, well, yeah, there's less manpower, there's 1,000. Yeah, but remember, once these guys start dying, we start losing manpower from the central manpool to reinforce the division. Not only that, the experience, all the equipment, this is like just a terrible, terrible division for that reason. It's weak. Think of it. You've got one guy stood there with basically nothing and no support, and he's not going to hold the line very well. You fill him up with, companies and regiments of just endless personnel that have all got equipment. They're going to be much better dealing with what they're doing. And so now you think, well, hang on a minute. I need the more combat width, the better then, surely. Well, yes, the more combat width, the better. The problem is twofold. One, it's going to be hard to equip loads of divisions that are all fully kitted out. You need more people, more equipment. So it's harder to do it from that side. But even if you could, and you could somehow supply them, you could rail, you've got airdrops, you've got all of that, covered as well. You can't fit them all into, well, this particular battle, combat width is capped out at 70, which means if you were to design a division and fill it up with these infantry, let's just see what would happen to the combat width. Currently 18. Now it's 30, and so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, that's going to be 40, that's going to be 50. That means you could only get one battalion stuck in. Combat width of 50, which, yeah, is good, but when the limit's 70, not really. You're like at 60% capacity. You can't have two of those divisions because that would make it from 50 to 100, and, 70 combat width, adding another 33% on that is not 100. I think it's in the early 90s, something like that. The point is, you would only have one division in, and the other guy could have more. Now, at this moment in time, he doesn't, but he could. And so that right there, I think, is combat width. Now, if there's any part of this that you don't understand, please, please, please leave a comment, ask me, and I will address it, because I'm hoping now that people get, I've deliberately spent more time going through this stuff so that people understand it, and hopefully I've been able to pull that off in this video. And again, I'm just trying to think, is there anything here that I haven't covered? Different land has different combat width, and again, press F5 and just hover the mouse over, and you can see every one. And, again, the different types of terrain together with whether it's hilly or not, and then depending from how many directions you were attacking that tile. So let's just say the bad guy had this particular tile, and we were surrounding it all the way round. We would have 5 or 6 tiles going for it, and so the combat width, instead of being 70, you can see plus 35, it would be 70 plus 35 plus 35, which would be 140, plus 35 plus 35, which would be 210, plus 35 plus 35 would be 280. So we would have a combat width of 280, which we could completely fill up attacking one enemy tile, which is partially why when we surround enemies, they're so easy to kill, not least that they're cut off from their supplies. Alright guys, I hope you found that informative, and until next time, wherever in the world you may be, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. From me, take care, ta-ra.